On March 8th, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 passengers and crew vanished without a trace. No distress call, no final message, just gone. For nearly a decade, the world has searched for answers, yet the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries of our time. What really happened that night? Was it mechanical failure, a foreign plot, deliberate sabotage, or even human intervention? Welcome to the flagship episode of The Black Box, where we dive deep into the world's most perplexing disappearances, unsolved crimes, and conspiracies hiding in plain sight. In this episode, we retrace the final moments of MH370, dissect the theories, and explore the evidence left behind. This is The Black Box. Let's open it. Welcome to The Black Box with Joshua and Scott, also known as Francis. How you doing, Francis?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on tonight.
You're my co-host. I'm not having you on. This is our flagship episode of The Black Box, where we will be looking into all the unsolved mysteries, both in real life and on the internet, dark media and such. And yeah, we're starting off with a big boy today. Before we get into that, let's go into our format. I just discussed what our topics will be, but basically we're going to cover one kind of unsolved mystery, an episode, and then we're going to, postulate some theories and talk it through, and then at the end of the episode, we're gonna do what we call our 99% guess, which is just like us deciding, well, this theory is probably the most likely theory, why we think that. But it's only 99%. It's not 100% because you got to leave off 1%. That's called a priori if you did philosophy. Certainty is the thing of fools, I think, is what my philosophy teacher told me in college. Francis, what do you think of that?
What do I think of what your professor told you in college?
Yes. What do you think of what my professor told me in college? Professor Trueblood was his name.
Ah, yes. Professor Trueblood. Yes. Indeed. Yeah, man. Yeah, certainty, makes the heart grow fonder, as they say.
Yeah,
I don't know. Whatever you're talking about.
What? What does that mean? So today, our first unsolved
cotton
mystery
candy made?
Is, once again, like I said, something that me and you have been... I think they take sugar and they find a way to spin it into a fine...
That's what we really need to find out.
Cotton-like substance. The cotton candy men.
Cotton candy.
The dudes. This is something that we've been talking about for a while now, me and you. You've sent me a bunch of videos on it, and it got me really back into the mystery, even though I really haven't cared about this mystery until you sent me those things. And that is Malaysia Flight's disappearance. Malaysia Flight 370's disappearance. So that is what we're covering today. It's something we've been going back and forth on. I was just hanging out with you a couple weeks ago, and we watched a Netflix documentary, and we picked it apart and, kind of talked a little shit and whatnot. What's your take right off the bat? Your thoughts with Malaysia Flight 370?
Pilot did a mass murder suicide.
Whoa! You're burying the lead. All right, we'll get to that's okay. All right, we'll get to.
You asked for my take. You straight up said, "What's your final take?"
No, not what's your final take. What's your take? Oh, what's your take on the mystery? Like, what do you think of it? Where does it rank for you in the annals of unsolved mysteries?
Towards the absolute bottom, near the solved mysteries.
Wait, what? Why? This is
because this has been pretty much solved.
No.
Here we go.
It has not been solved. Nothing has been solved, not until they find the plane. And even then, it probably won't even be solved. But
So they have to find all of the pieces to a plane that slammed into the ocean going probably 500, 600 knots.
we don't know if it slammed into the ocean.
Oh, right. It glided down gently.
There's been other theories that have said that mayhaps
Aliens
it didn't
abducted
go
it.
into the. I'm not gonna jump the gun on that, but there's some funky things about this case. There's some funky things about this case.
Not really. There's just people who stand to make money off of conspiracy theories.
Like us?
Do we stand to make money from this?
Yeah.
Oh. Then yeah, dude, fucking Russians like hijacked the shit out of that, obviously. Something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Joshua Francis here, is our resident aviation.
Not my name, but
our resident aviation expert.
I am not an expert in aviation at all.
He claimed to be. Joshua, why don't you tell us a little bit about planes and about the type of plane that disappeared, this Malaysia flight plane?
All right, so Malaysia Flight 370 was a Boeing 777, 200 series, extended range. Yeah.
And
it was flying from. I actually don't remember. I don't know. You're the details guy.
We'll get into that. Yeah, like, but how like unfathomable is it for a plane like this size? 777. That's the biggest commercial liner, right?
No.
There's bigger ones.
747.
Oh, okay, but this is a pretty big fucking plane. This is one of those planes that have like 2 rows and then a bunch of rows in the middle and then another row to the right, right?
Yeah, it's 3 rows.
Yeah. So this is how unfathomable is it that this would just vanish?
Extremely.
Yes. It's quite, they call it the biggest mystery in aviation history, more than Amelia Earhart, more than the people who flew into the Bermuda Triangle, more than the dude in Australia who thought he saw like an alien craft above him and then vanished, more even than the Roanoke colony, and that's not even aviation.
That we know of.
All right? So, why don't we get into the disappearance of Malaysia Flight 370? On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, also known as MH370, a Boeing, as Francis said, 777-200ER, vanished without a trace, becoming one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. Feel me? All right.
You feel me? Fuck.
MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport at 12:41 a.m. local time, bound for Beijing Capital International Airport. The flight was operated by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 flight hours, and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, who was on his final training flight. On board, there were 227 passengers from 14 different countries, including from America, France, the UK, but mostly from China, and I think a few from Australia, and had on it families, business travelers, and vacationers. All right, so initially the flight proceeded smoothly, climbing to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Jesus, that'd be pretty low if it was 3,500. The aircraft was in contact with air traffic control, and all systems appeared to be functioning normally. Now at 1:19 a.m., as the plane was crossing from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea, the cockpit issued its final communication. Good night, Malaysia 370. Shortly afterwards, the plane's transponder, which provides information on the aircraft's location, speed, and altitude, was turned off. This marked the beginning of the aircraft's mysterious disappearance. Now, with the transponder off, MH370 effectively vanished from civilian radar. However, Malaysian military radar continued to track the aircraft as it made a sharp turn to the southwest, back across the Malay Peninsula, and then northwestward over the Andaman Sea. This dramatic deviation from its planned flight path raised immediate suspicions and questions about what might have occurred on board. The last confirmed radar contact with MH370 was at 2:22 a.m., approximately 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang, Malaysia. After this point, the plane disappeared from radar, leaving no electronic trace. The absence of any distress signal or communication from the cockpit only deepened the mystery, right? Now this for the search efforts. The initial search efforts focused on the South China Sea, the area where the plane was last in contact with air traffic control. However, as information from military radar and satellite data emerged, the search area expanded drastically. Inmarsat, a British satellite telecommunications company, analyzed pings sent between the aircraft and its satellite network, suggesting that MH370 had flown for several more hours after losing contact, likely ending in the southern Indian Ocean. This new data shifted the search to one of the most remote and inhospitable regions on Earth. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau, the ATSB, led the underwater search efforts, deploying state-of-the-art sonar equipment and autonomous underwater vehicles to scour the ocean floor. Despite the extensive search, though, which covered over 120,000 square kilometers, no definitive wreckage was found during the initial phase of the search. But then, in June 2015, a significant breakthrough occurred when a flaperon, which is a part of an aircraft's wing, right, Francis?
Yeah.
Why is it called a flaperon?
It's like a flap and an aileron.
What's an aileron?
It controls the orientation of the plane as it flies, or it helps controls. It's one of the control surfaces.
So that name is a portmanteau of flap and whatever you just said.
Aileron, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so now I just learned some shit too. So we're all learning today. All right, bitch. All right. In July 2015, a significant breakthrough occurred when a flaperon, a part of an aircraft's wing, washed ashore on Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. This debris was confirmed to be from MH370. Over the following years, additional pieces of debris, including wing fragments and other aircraft parts, were discovered on the shores of various islands in the Indian Ocean. These findings provided some clue, but were insufficient to pinpoint the aircraft's final resting place or determine the cause of the disappearance. So that, in a nutshell, is the story of how it all went down. Now, let's talk about some initial thoughts. Joshua, also known as Francis, let's talk a little bit about this disappearance. Now, I know one thing, and that the transponder, the transponder turning off is very suspect, right? Because
obviously,
it is unlikely, to an extent, that the transponder would turn off and then the other systems of the plane that give its position would turn off in like succession. Because if it was an electrical failure, it would all shut down all at once, right?
For a brief moment of time, if there was a complete electrical failure, the pilot could put out the little ram thing. It's a ram turbine. And what that is, it's a small turbine that just kind of falls out of the bottom of the plane, and it spins, obviously, and it generates enough electricity to run radios, I think partial navigation, like all the critical systems you would need in order to hopefully safely land. So there's no reason for the transponder to ever fully turn off and never back on. Almost every system on a modern airline has redundancies.
That's right. And from what I remember, there was 3 different redundancies on the plane to give away its position other than the antennae at the top. And I can't remember. So it was a transponder, Was it Satcom? It was that one or something like that, something on those lines, and then something else. But basically, because of that, and another video that I watched that said the weird thing about the transponder getting shut off is that if it was an electrical failure, it would have just shut off entirely. But apparently, when you turn a transponder off manually, it has to pass an option before it goes to shut off, which sends out some kind of signal, or something like, I can't remember fully. But basically, someone on YouTube like found out that like, yeah, if since that signal did come off, it basically says that someone turned it off manually, which is super suspect, because then that means that Malaysia flight probably disappeared due to human intervention, not due to mechanical failure.
Oh, almost like this mystery, you just solved it.
No. We're not there
Whoa.
yet. We
just
theories.
speed ran this.
No, we have theories and speculations to get to. This is the black box. All right. You know, you open this up and you find all the info. Now, the disappearance of MH370, as I said, has given rise to numerous theories, each attempting to explain the incident. Some suggest a catastrophic mechanical failure, such as a sudden loss of cabin pressure, which would incapacitate the crew and passengers. Others propose more sinister scenarios.
Honestly, bro, if I was on that flight, I could survive that.
Yeah, you think?
I literally don't need oxygen.
Oh, yeah? Why is that? Are you a tardigrade? Like,
yeah, that's right, baby.
You're a sea bear?
It's a water bear.
Water bear, whatever you want to call it. They look crazy. No. So let's go into some of the theories. So obviously, the first theory that people thought when it initially happened, right off the bat, was mechanical failure. A catastrophic mechanical failure might have incapacitated the crew and passengers, leaving the aircraft to fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crash. A sudden depressurization could explain the loss of communication and incapacitation of the crew. Alternatively, a fire in the cockpit or avionics bay could have displayed communication systems and disabled communication systems and overwhelmed the crew. What do you think about that first theory, mechanical failure?
There's evidence to suggest it wasn't mechanical failure.
Well, okay, let's...
where like the pilot, piloted the aircraft?
Wait, we don't know that. We don't know yet.
You already said they tracked it on primary radar, and that's not even talking about Inmarsat. A primary radar coming back across the peninsula, tracked it turning south, and then Inmarsat was able to locate it
using the handshakes.
Even further into the South Indian Ocean.
So, all right, let's
Once
say
again,
that.
This conspiracy has been solved.
No. We don't know if it's been solved because there's nothing definitive yet. Now,
except for all the data.
Let's rule out mechanical failure, because you're right. It's unlikely that a plane undergoing mechanical failure would be able to not only continue on like that, but make a very designated turn. If let's say if at the point where the communications went down and there was a mechanical failure, then the plane probably would have just continued on its course if it was just on autopilot, right?
Yep.
So it turning clearly points to human intervention. So that brings us to our second theory, a hijacking. Another theory involves the possibility, and some speculate, that the plane was taken over by unknown individuals who then redirected it for unknown purposes.
And flew it straight into the ocean. Mission accomplished. We got them, boys.
Well, there are some that think that with the hijacking, they might have been experienced in the hijacking, but not experienced flying the plane. So maybe they essentially fucked up, and in their kind of chaos, my cat is just screaming, in the chaos.
Yeah, because he hears this nonsensical idea. Yeah, so you're going to have this big-time terrorist hijacking, and the pilots aren't trained? Yo, the pilots for 9/11 spent, a better part of like a year or two getting flight lessons? If somebody's going to do this hijacking, they're going to make sure that their operatives are trained.
True, yes, that is true. But what if something happened? What if there was a struggle? What if there was an incapacitation of the hijackers by the pilot or the crew? Maybe one of them got stabbed and they were trying to fly the plane and then fucked up and turned it the other way, and then depressurization happened, or someone fucked someone up and then it just flew off autopilot into the sea.
Because there were several turns that happened. Okay, the question would be, okay, where did the point of hijacking occur?
Well, we would assume that it occurred once the transponder got shut off.
So, right as they were going to switch over to the Vietnamese airspace.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
in that black zone.
How do you explain the following turns? After they cross back over the peninsula, they turn south again. The plane won't just automatically do that if it's on autopilot.
Yeah, that's true. So there are some who have said, quite erroneously, that someone hijacked the plane and flew it to Kazakhstan for unknown reasons. Now, that was also purported in the Netflix documentary, but I think we can soundly say that probably didn't fucking happen because...
That documentary sucked ass. They touched upon what actually probably happened for like 10 minutes, and then they spent the rest of the documentary going, "There's no way this guy did that. There's no way. He looked happy. He seemed like a nice guy.
Wait. We're getting there.
I've seen him around the neighborhood before. There's no way he did that."
The next theory is also related to hijacking, which is, rather than just a regular hijacking, this was a remote hijacking. So some have suggested,
which is not possible,
that MH370 could have been taken over remotely, either by malicious actors or as part of a failed experiment by a government or corporation.
Using what magic?
Modern aircraft like the Boeing 777 have advanced avionics that, in theory, could be vulnerable to hacking. There have been discussion in the aviation industry about remote control technology for hijack prevention. So the idea was at the time that someone found a way to break into the avionics section of the plane, basically plug into the electronic brain of the aircraft, and was able to depressurize the plane to knock everyone out and then control the plane remotely.
Those controls aren't even in the avionics bay. Pressurization controls are only in the cockpit. So
what you're saying is that it's unlikely.
Yeah, whoever came up with that theory, I can't say these words on this podcast, all right? But that's what they are, and I pray for them, all right?
Well, it was mainly the guy in the Netflix documentary, I can't remember his name,
who's selling a book,
who came up with this Tom Clancy style theory to probably sell a book, and the whole aviation world basically denounced him as a lunatic for thinking this. So we've gone through hijacking and remote hijacking, and unlikely that it's either of those two. Now here's another one that I think is pretty interesting. There's the shoot down theory, which is that MH370 might have been accidentally or intentionally shot down by military force. This could be due to misidentification, a perceived threat, or during a covert military operation. The plane's last known location was near sensitive military areas, including the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where several countries have strategic interests. Also, there was a lot of U.S. Practices or military practices going on in the area at the time. Proponents of this theory argue that the lack of wreckage and the confusion in search efforts could indicate a deliberate cover-up from countries like Malaysia, the US, the UK, all those. And what is the reason for the shoot down theory? The reason was that there might have been some kind of cargo on board that maybe a foreign entity might not have wanted to be delivered to China. So they actually found out, people found out that on the aircraft list of luggage that there was a significant number of lithium batteries, which are known to pose a fire risk. So this could also cause the fire potentially. But also people have said that these lithium batteries, for whatever reason, maybe, what are they called? The AWACS? The AWACS planes were able to AWACS were able to pick up that this plane was carrying this kind of precious cargo that they didn't want China to have, and then shot the plane down. What do you think of that one?
I feel like I don't even want to acknowledge any of the words you just said because it is just the dumbest load of shit I've ever heard. Those strings of sentences you just said is like I have brain damage. I took critical brain damage from hearing it. It's so dumb. Dude, what? The AWACS detected its cargo? The fuck are you talking? It's just radar. It's just a big radar dish on a plane.
That's what I can't remember her name, but she was on the Netflix documentary as well. That's what she purported in her book. Basically, she purported this theory and did say that, like, I know it sounds far-fetched and ludicrous, but she believed that she was closer to the actual answer than the official report, which was next to nothing. So she's probably wrong, and she's probably another lunatic because she's just another journalist trying to make a buck off of a wild story while trying to kind of capitalize on this whole, like, oh, I'm doing this for the families thing. But we all know that's bullshit. She just wants to, cash out. So here's another theory that this was aliens. Now, you think I'm fucking around, but there are people who believe that this plane was warped to another dimension by alien forces. There's even a video on the web of these 3 little dots circling around a plane, and then the plane just vanishing. What do you think of that one?
Sure. Yeah, let's go with aliens. Who cares? Whatever.
No, I mean, what do you think of that theory?
Yeah, the alien theory, I feel like it's so lazy. It's such a lazy theory to come up with because
Fair.
You barely need any evidence. You can have a sun glare off a camera lens. You can have some, like, atmospheric condition where you can have dirt on your camera lens or something and be like, oh, this is all the evidence we need. It's clearly extraterrestrials. I mean, dude, there were 3 dots in the sky. E.T. phone home, am I right?
well, let's say that was a little fun theory. Let's say it's probably not that. So that brings us to the last theory, which is that Captain Zahari deliberately diverted the plane and flew it to a remote part of the ocean to commit suicide, possibly as a political protest or due to personal issues. This theory is supported by the plane's deliberate turns and the fact that the aircraft continued flying for several hours after losing contact. Now, I do want to say that there is no conclusive evidence that has been found to substantiate this claim, but there have been a lot of rollouts of the most likely scenario of how he would have achieved that. And it was very possible, however hard, but very possible for him to do that. Now, this is a guy that was super fucking experienced pilot who knew the ins and outs of flying and the planes and all that.
All right, let's roll that back. He was experienced, but his flight hours weren't anything like crazy.
I read differently. I heard that his flight hours were pretty high. That they were pretty, like, impressively high. Is that not true?
What was his flight hours you said it was? 19,000 on the 777 type?
He had 18,365 hours of flying experience.
Yeah, that's not bad, but that's what you would expect somebody who's maybe halfway through their aviation career to have on a single type.
Well, we can assume...
So it's a lot. He's I would consider him an expert, but it's not like a test pilot with 50,000 hours who's been flying for 60 years or like 50 years. But
you would say that he had enough experience to potentially pull off such a ordeal.
I can do it.
Process. Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, fuck off. Yeah, you could do it. Like,
I mean...
This theory suggests that Zahari either incapacitated or locked out First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid from the cockpit, then turned off the transponder, turned off the other systems that would give the plane's position away, depressurized the cabin to incapacitate passengers, crew, passengers and crew, and then continued flying the plane on a pre-programmed route until it ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. Here's some evidence towards that fact. The flight simulator data. So investigators found a flight simulator in Zahari's home that had a route similar to the presumed flight path of MH370. Now, a lot of people have said that this isn't good. That isn't good evidence due to the fact that he didn't literally fly the simulator there. He just positioned the points in a sort of way that made it look like that. So the FBI actually raided his home, and they concluded like that wasn't enough evidence to pin it on him. But it's still fucking suspicious, in my opinion, and very coincidental that exists at all. You know, that's still kind of crazy to me. And you have to contend with the fact that if it was any of these other theories that someone felt the need to turn the plane completely around, fly back over, and then crash into the ocean. If it was a hijacking, that doesn't make sense. Why would hijackers just crash a plane into the ocean? What's the point? Unless maybe they too were trying to do a murder-suicide. But
if they were going to do that, they would leave a note. If they had demands, they would make demands. If they were trying to send a message, they would maybe want to send the message. You know?
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is anyone who's doing a hijacking of that sort for maybe a political or whatever mean would probably do that. And a person who would do it for personal reasons, they probably wouldn't put in as much time and effort into learning how to do this grand kind of hijacking just for a personal reason. Like, we can assume that that's pretty unlikely, right? Like some random fucker who decides like, hey, you know what? I want to kill myself and a bunch of people on a plane by crashing into the ocean. Let me learn everything I can about planes to do that. They probably aren't going to do that, right? So
unless that's exactly what the pilot did, and that was
I'm not talking about the pilot right now. I'm talking about other people that aren't the pilot.
Randoms. Yeah.
Randos that aren't the pilot. Now the pilot, we can go on, but it there's so much things that you have to contend with. If it was a mechanical failure, like a fire or something happened, why would the plane turn around so expertly? Many aviation experts have said that the turn that he made had to have been a turn from a very experienced pilot. Like, it was a very sharp kind of almost steep U-turn, and you have to be pretty good. So what they think is that he depressurizes the cabin, he locks his first mate out. I read that on the cockpit now in a lot of planes, there's this lockout feature, right? Where basically there's a keypad and only the pilot and co-pilot know the code. And if you type in the code, then you can get inside the barred cockpit door. But there's a delay when you type the code in of about, I think it's 10 seconds or 30 seconds, where someone in the cockpit locked in there could shut off the command and essentially keep the person out. So the speculation is that the co-pilot, perhaps, this is once again just pure speculation, perhaps typed in the code, expecting it to open because the plane was depressurizing and as everyone was falling asleep and dying from hypoxia, which apparently isn't like the worst way to go, not to get dark, but apparently you just get kind of drunk and loopy and then you just kind of fade off. Yeah. So basically he types in the code, he's waiting for it to open. It should open because he's figuring at this point the pilot, there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with the pilot. Something weird's going on. But then he isn't let in. So that only means that someone in the cockpit was overriding it and preventing him from getting in there, which I'm sure at the moment he was like, oh shit, this guy's going to kill us. So everyone passes out. Zahari has his breather on, which is, it has more oxygen in it than the rest of the mass on the plane. And then after everyone passes out, he turns back on all the systems, more or less, or all the life support systems, and then flies the plane. And a lot of people think too that the reason why the plane flew over Penang is because that's where he was born, and he wanted to look at his home one more time before flying off into the ocean. Then he just flies it off until it runs out of fuel. It crashes into the ocean, and he does it because he wanted to do the greatest aviation mystery. He wanted to conduct the greatest aviation mystery of all time. Now, I kind of jumped the gun because we need to go into our 99% guess section, which is what we think happened. And what do you think happened? Out of all these theories, what do you think it was, Joshua? 99% guess.
Murder, suicide by the pilot.
Okay.
It's 100% guess, by the way.
Wait, it's not 100%.
Mine's 100%.
It can't be 100%. It can't be 100%.
I'm under no contractual obligation to only believe at 99%.
Bro,
I believe at 100.
You can't have absolute certainty.
I do.
If there's no hard evidence at the end of the day to say any of this. This is all inference.
Yeah, well, how about you infer these nuts?
I'm just saying, man.
I'm just saying.
You know what I'm saying? So, I agree. My 99% guess is that this is the most likely scenario is that, and this has been backed up by a lot of people in the aviation's industry, and they've said, yeah, more than likely the pilot did it. But here's the thing. On a lot of documentaries, especially the Netflix one, not to bash Netflix here, but they do shy away from blaming Zahari. They initially kind of say it could be this, and then they instantly go away from it. And they have all this testimonial from people saying, the one thing we know is that he probably didn't do this. And
the documentary would be 10 minutes long. If they just looked at all the evidence, they would be like, we can't make a Netflix documentary. We need a big budget. Let's make it an hour. Let's have it be like 10 minutes of like, oh, this is probably what it is. And then let's spend the rest of the time discrediting all that with nonsense about there were 2 U.S. Navy AWACS operating in the area. What were they doing?
Well, yes, that's exactly how it rolled out. Yeah, so it is weird to me because they very clearly didn't. I don't know if it's because they didn't want to get sued by the family, but there was a lot of things going on in Zahari's life, like he was having marital problems or whatever, and then apparently he had a mistress who also like kind of was leaving him. And then,
I honestly heard she was fined like a fucking parking ticket. I don't know if that's been confirmed.
I'm gonna kill you one day. I'm just kidding, by the way. Don't arrest me off of that. That is a joke. That is friendly banter between me and this kid who have been friends for
investigate 311.
I don't know, like fucking 17 years now. But
we're not friends.
Yeah, we're not friends. But they continued on and on and on about how it's all these other things. But one thing it can be is that Zahari, because, and the only evidence the only thing they say is that, well, his family says he would never do this. That's not enough to say someone wouldn't do something. You say, well, there's nothing in his personality or psyche or his this or that would point towards him doing this kind of horrible crime. And it's just like, bro, you can say that about like every secretive killer in history. Like, are you kidding me? Like, look at John Wayne Gacy. Everyone thought a pillar of the community. This motherfucker throws parties for everyone. Everyone was like, oh, well, Zahari had a YouTube channel where he showed people how to like fix their AC and shit. Who cares? Who gives a shit? Who cares if he did all that? He clearly could have had some demons. All right. And I don't know. He just wanted to go out with a fucking bang. Perhaps. I don't know. We don't know for sure, but more than likely, yeah, he wanted to go out with a bang. He had some darkness, and he did this thing, you know. Just because family members say, well, of course they don't want to think that he did this. There's family members. They don't want to think that someone in their family or bloodline could do such a heinous act, but the truth, and other people like John Wayne Gacy's sister and mother, when he got arrested, they were like, oh no, there's no way it's him. The only reason why they eventually came around is because Gacy was still alive for them to see, oh, he did do it. And now, I mean, this motherfucker isn't alive anymore for them to be like, oh, I guess he did do it.
Unless they landed in Kazakhstan, where he is alive.
So what is he doing in Kazakhstan?
I don't know.
There, that's the other.
I guess mystery. That's episode 2.
But yes,
what is Kazakhstan?
The more than likely theory more than likely theory, beyond all the crazy ones, is that unfortunately Zahari did this. And maybe another reason why a lot of people don't want to put this out there is because they don't want to believe that a pilot who is in control of your life once you get into a plane could do something like this on completely random, on a random standard flight, everyday flight. But the
even though this
is,
exact thing has happened multiple times.
well, that's what I was going to get into. So you have told me that this has happened a bit before, that this has happened before, and that it's not out of the realm of crazy or possibility that a pilot would do this.
Right? Yeah, it's not common by any stretch of the imagination, but it's happened several times.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't not to sound macabre, but why wouldn't it? Like, pilots are humans. Yeah. Humans have darkness in them. Why can't a pilot have some darkness and choose to do this? It's a terrifying thought, because you're completely out of control when you're on a fucking plane. You're completely in the hands of the pilot. The pilot decides, hey, I'm going to crash this thing. You're cooked. There's nothing you can do about it. You're donezo, you know? It's scary, and that's why I think a lot of people stray away from it. But again, it's extremely not... you could probably count on your fingers and toes how much times it's happened in history, probably, but it has happened. And there's actually a great documentary on YouTube that kind of like lays out that fact that pilots are some of the most stressed people on the planet. You know, they're staying up for hours on end piloting planes. Also, there's I think you told me a stigma with like mental health in the aviation's industry when it comes to pilots, correct?
Yeah, because if you go to your company appointed therapist or whatever, that therapist has to report to the company and say, hey, this guy's not mentally fit to fly. And if you're not mentally fit to fly, you're grounded and you can't get money. You don't get paid.
Exactly. So, and that's the whole thing. That's why a lot of pilots apparently kind of hide their mental problems and mental health, you know? So a big reason why probably no one thought that he had these problems is because he outwardly projected that he didn't have them because he didn't want to get fired or canned or whatever, because flying was his life and yada, yada, yada. But then he did this dastardly act. More than likely, not 100% sure, but more than 100%. More than likely, he did it. More than likely.
100%. Yeah. We're called. This is called the black box. You know, black boxes are absolute. You know what I'm saying?
You got me on that one. Well, so that's where we're leaving it for now. The disappearance of Malaysia Flight 370 remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Despite extensive search efforts and numerous investigations, the lack of conclusive evidence has led to this proliferation of theories. Now, while some theories are grounded in technical and circumstantial evidence, others venture into the realm of speculation and conspiracy. Most of them, I would say, do this. Until definitive evidence is found, the fate of MH370 will continue to be a topic of intense debate and investigation.
Yeah, for people who are just clinically bored to death.
Look.
If you had...
This was the final report, and the black box has said, more than likely, it 100%. Was a murder-suicide by the pilot. More than likely. 99%. And that's where we're leaving this episode. This flagship episode of the Black Box. This was the final report. We have been talking about this case forever, and I convinced Joshua here to do one last discussion with me on this podcast, and we will never speak of this again. That was a lie. We're going to continue talking about it, and we'll have an episode 2 coming to you soon. Not an episode 2, a part 2 of this episode coming to you soon about Malaysia Flight. We will have new theories and new evidence brought
up. I really hope not.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We have a lot more unsolved mysteries to cover.
We're getting into actual interesting conspiracies and mysteries. This was just a taste of previews of the remix. All right.
This is just a little amuse bouche of the deal here, and honestly, it was a very easy thing to research, so that's also part of it. Our next episode is going to be a fucking whopper, because we are going to be covering the motherfucking Dyatlov Pass. Now that is a meaty one, and that one has no conclusive more than likely shit. So
well, I mean, we'll talk about it next time.
But this is Scott and Joshua, also known as Francis, with the Black Box,
AKA the Backshot Bandito.
You are not the Backshot Bandito.
It could be.
If you try.
Play your cards right. All right.
We're out of here.
Cut that out.